Hey, welcome everybody to episode 19 of the Min Ed Soda podcast. I am the Duffer Kip Link, and I am happy spring has come. I've got to play a little golf, and I am still a complete duffer. That became very apparent after the first round. And today I am joined by my good friend, the doctor, Dr. Todd Van Erp. Welcome
Kip,
to another episode.
Kip, you're being too hard on yourself. It's the first time out. I mean, when you're in the middle of July and you're still digging up the course, and when you show up to the clubhouse to pay your fee, and the clubhouse people just go, "Oh my gosh, we need to put the grounds crew on alert," then maybe you should be worried.
Yeah, actually, it wasn't a horrible round. It was actually a fairly decent round, except it was a part of my league, and I had a lead going into the final two holes, and then 3 penalty strokes later, that all went away. The slice showed up. I went out of bounds right twice and put it in the lake. It wasn't pretty.
That's why that game is a racket. It draws you in. Like you could play this, like for you play 7 great holes, and then all of a sudden it's like you start feeling like you're pretty good, and then all of a sudden everything just goes to hell. So yeah, I'm with you. I've been there plenty of times, or sometimes what I'll do is the first 2 or 3 holes is absolutely atrocious, and then my last 6 holes or whatever are awesome, and then all of a sudden when I'm getting to the end of the round, I'm thinking, hey, I'm pretty good, I'm going to come back and play again. So it's all part of the racket, man.
It is. That's the beauty and the frustration of the game, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, Todd, for our last couple episodes, we've really spent some time trying to help principals create balance in their work schedule, talking about some email tips, tricks, and hacks, some calendar tips, tricks, and hacks, the relationship with their admin assistant, really just trying to help provide balance so they can focus on their priorities. And today is a little bit of a continuation of that. And today we're going to jump in and start talking about the power of leadership teams and delegating some of the workload to staff, but it's not necessarily delegating the workload. It's empowering staff to work collectively and collaboratively to move the school forward towards your vision and your mission.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I like what you said there, Kip. It's to me, it's not about the delegation. It is about exactly what you said, the empowerment. Because as we look at things, we look at certain aspects of the school organization from our vantage point as leaders. I think it's critically important that you get the perspective that other people can provide, teachers, support staff, because
Parents.
Yeah, because we see it from our perspective, and that is not always the air quotes right way to be looking at it. So I'm totally with you on that. I think hopefully that today we can provide some ideas around leadership team development that is going to be helpful for school leaders, and help kind of take as a school leader, you don't have to feel like you're in this all by yourself. It should be a collective effort from everyone that is on this leadership team to help lead the school.
And now, we're saying leadership team, but I'm going to be a strong advocate today that we don't have one leadership team within our building. We have several leadership teams in our building that all have a specific vision and mission. I've been in places where we have a leadership team, and depending on what you call it, the site leadership or site management, but you have this team, but because they try to do everything, they actually lose focus, and there's a struggle that occurs. And it's that internal struggle of, are we putting our time into the right activities with this team? And by right, that can change. So you're going to need a leadership team for your instructional practices. This is going to be the team that is really studying your data, maybe doing some of your academic goal setting. They are going to help with your professional development needs and plans and helping carry out that professional development. You might have a site management team that is about building operations. You might have a student culture leadership team, whether that's PBIS or something else, but they're really focused on your students' social emotional well-being, and how we are creating fun activities for the students and engaging activities. You might have another leadership team for the adult climate and culture, a sunshine group or whatever you might call it. But if we have just one leadership team that tries to do all of those things, then we don't really give enough time and attention to any one of them. And so I threw out a whole bunch, but you could also have technology. You could have a transitions team if you're transitioning to something. So some of these teams could be ongoing and forever, and some of the teams might be just for a short bit of time.
And a couple of things I'd say about that, Kip, is I believe it's important that you don't have the same people from teaching teams or from staff, families, communities, whoever is serving on these teams. You can't have the same people on all of these teams. If you have a teacher that wants to be involved in the instructional leadership team and the site management team, and what, you're burning those people out. And you're not giving other people an opportunity to be leaders within the school. So I'm a strong advocate for having many, like as many people as you can have involved on those different teams as possible.
And sometimes that can be difficult in a small school.
Oh yeah.
And so sometimes you have to change your representation model, right? Like maybe you don't have somebody from every grade. Maybe you've got a grade band of like K through 2 or something, and you've got one teacher from K through 2, or or even if you're thinking in a high school where we only have singleton departments, well, maybe math and science has one representative, and English and social studies have one representative, that they can create some side teams to share information and things with as well. But I'm in agreement with you. You can't be the same person on all the different leadership teams. We need to have some of that shared leadership.
Yeah, and the other thing I was going to bring up too was the importance of having linked communication between those teams, because they're not all going to be meeting at the same time, and a lot of times a school leader is involved in all of those different committees, but there has to be some type of communication protocol so that when the instructional leadership team is meeting, they get the key messages or the important pieces of that meeting out to the rest of the staff, and however you do that, if it's by email, whether it's team meetings or grade level meetings, however that is done, there has to be communication. Same thing with the site management team, same thing with any other team that you would have, that there has to be some type of communication protocol so that everybody knows what the other teams are doing. Because what you don't want to have doing is, if there's one team that is working on one aspect of something in the school, and then another team is working on the same thing, you're duplicating those efforts. And that's not what you're trying to do. You're trying to divide the workload, divide the leadership opportunities so that everyone can be involved.
Yeah, and as you start to talk about some of those things, right, like we're kind of jumping all over the board here on steps and different things as we get started, but it's really going to start with first developing what's the purpose for this team. What is the vision and mission for this team? So if we are the instructional leadership team, right, we're going to be focused on student learning and instructional practices and professional development. So we're going to build some kind of vision and mission around that. And so when people come to be a part of that team, they know what the finish line is, or that they're trying to accomplish. I know of some principals right now that they're opening new buildings, and so they have transition teams. that are part of that. It's a couple of different schools coming together into this new building. And so they have that transition team where this is a short-lived. That transition team is in place right now with the vision and mission of creating a seamless transition to this building. And they're making some leadership decisions and some other decisions, but they're going to be a short-lived. They might meet frequently for a short amount of time, because once the building opens, now that team is done. Like, the transition has occurred, and now they move to other leadership teams or different things. So what's that vision? What's the mission? And what's your timeline for meeting? And having some of those things as close to upfront as you can. So when you start recruiting your membership to those teams, people know what they're signing up for.
That is key. Yeah. Some instructional leadership teams that I've worked with recently, we have had more meetings during the beginning of the team's existence, because the team needs to get up to speed on deciding what is our vision and mission, and we'll get into this a little bit later, like what are our collective commitments, what is our timeline that you were just talking about. So we have more meetings up front, and we want to tell that group, the first 3 months we're going to be meeting twice a month. After that, it is our goal to be meeting once a month for 2 hours at a time, so that we can take care of the business that we need to in our meeting. So I totally agree with you, being able to lay out some type of time expectation, because people really want to know that up front.
Yeah. And one of the great resources that is out there as you start thinking about developing these leadership teams is Tuckman's team development model. And he's got 4 stages: the forming, the storming, the norming, and the performing. And you got to kind of envision it like a set of steps, a staircase, because each step builds on the previous one. And each of them are helping get us to that performing stage, the top level. And if we skip a step, it can have a negative result on our performance. And every time we start a new team or we change the vision and mission, we kind of have to start over with the process. And so I said, it's that forming, storming, norming, performing. So if we stop and think about like the forming level, that's where we are sharing what the expectations are. We are getting to that common goal setting, the vision, mission piece. We're starting to develop trust. And as you started to say now, we have to build some community commitment. So we're also going to have this little storming stage in there before we get to those community commitments of just kind of figuring out the power structure of this team. It's going to be where we kind of get a feel of the different personalities and how they're interacting and going. And then we get to that norming stage of, this is where we're going to start agreeing about, this is how we're going to do business. This is what we're all agreeing to in terms of our listening, our confidentiality, our decision-making process, agendas. How do we build them? How do we get things on the agenda? All sorts of different things that kind of happen in those stages before we get to that performing of, now we're really doing our work. And so, as you said, there might have to be a lot of meetings up front so that we're actually ready to start doing our work.
I think one of these stages that of Tuckman's model where I think teams are kind of taken aback is when they get to that storming stage. Everyone is like, oh my gosh, this is such a great idea when I got onto this team. And now I'm dealing with all these different personalities. They have different thoughts and ideas, feelings, opinions about what we should be doing on this team. I think that can be one of the most difficult spots for a new leadership team to be in, because you don't necessarily have those relationships built with people on the team. You might not have that trust that you're wanting to have on that team. So I feel like the storming stage for any team is a really critical stage, that the team sticks with it. You need to have a leader that is supportive of that storming stage, and having those, being willing to lean into those conversations and those challenges and working through it so that you can keep moving along along that team development. So and I've seen that happen a number of times, where the storming stage is the one where people are looking around going, oh my God, what did I get myself into? And if you can get beyond that, I think your team is going to be strong.
Absolutely. Because then once we get to that, right, like now we can build those community commitments. Like, this is how we're going to do business. This is how we're going to operate. And this is how we're going to trust each other. And this is how we're going to call each other out if somebody's not pulling their fair share or doing what they committed to doing. And it's also now where we're going to start tapping into people's strengths, right? Have we done any kind of personality? I'm like, like the
Inventory.
Like, yeah, thank you. A personality inventory of building our strengths. And there's lots of them out there, like Clifton Strengths. There's several that are online that are free that you can have and figure out. But like, what are people's strengths? And are we filling the roles and responsibilities on the team with people with those strengths? So
and being able to appreciate the strengths that everybody brings, because they're not going to be the same as yours. And some people, they're going to have gifts and strengths that you don't have, but they irritate you. And knowing that, like processing, some people, they process things very quickly. Other people, they need some time to think through it. Well, whether you're on one end, one of those sometimes irritates the other. So being aware, I think, is critically important.
And then once we know those strengths, right? Like, is this person a strong facilitator? Are they a strong note taker? Are they a strong timekeeper? And even once we start establishing some of those roles, like, who is responsible for communicating out what decisions were made or what the discussions were today? And as we do some of those things, like, and we establish those roles, are those going to be permanent roles? Are they roles that trade out? Like, if we use our team, Todd, as the principal leadership support, we rotate the roles, but we also have noticed that there are some people that have a definite strength for some of those roles and they do a better job than others. But all of us, no matter what, have a role in every single meeting that we have.
Yeah, I'll openly admit, I'll be a little vulnerable here, that note taking is not my strength, because I get caught up in the conversation and then I forget that I'm supposed to be taking down notes from the meeting. So that would be one example of, I know that that's not a strength of mine. Do I still do the job? Yes, I still take on that job when it comes to me. I just know that when it's my job, I have to be very focused. Like, I have to come into that meeting knowing that I have to focus more on recording the thoughts and ideas of the meeting instead of necessarily being ready to jump into the conversation.
And a weakness is the timekeeper, because I feel bad cutting people off or saying we need to move on.
Yeah.
And so you kind of like start changing the agenda minutes on there to say, oh, well, we'll just take this 15 minutes longer, and then trying to monitor and adjust it. And that doesn't work. So part of that is developing those roles and responsibilities, but then also part of that is developing that agenda, and that you have components on your agenda that tells, like, is this a decision-making agenda item? Is this a brainstorming item? Is this a communication item? But so that you can do a better job of making sure you stick to the agenda is when we know what the purpose of that agenda item is in advance. And like, sometimes that our staff members have seen the agenda a few days in advance. So if it is a decision-making portion, they've had a chance to talk to some of their teammates before they get to the meeting, so that we're ready to move when we get to the meeting.
Yeah. And I think you just brought up a really important piece around the team development, is that agenda creation piece. A lot of teams, you don't have an unlimited amount of time to meet, so that whoever is creating that agenda really can you have to be planful about the things that you can get done during that. If it's a 60-minute meeting, what are the, like, how are we going to use that 60 minutes? What are the things that we need to discuss? And like what you were talking about, Kip, do we need to decide on this? Is this just a discussion piece and we're going to go back to our grade level teams or what have you to discuss? Is it an informational piece? Having those things laid out ahead of time is going to make your meeting be much more efficient than if you come to the meeting and it's just not there.
Yeah, and so now we working our way through these things. We've got our agendas, we've got our roles and our responsibilities. We know what our vision and our mission are, and we start performing the tasks that is required of this thing. But what kind of progress monitoring benchmarks have we put out there for ourselves? Do we, have we got our finish line and we've worked our way back, kind of the understanding or, the reverse design, and how are we progress monitoring our progress and checking in? Are we where we're supposed to be 1 month in? Or are we where we're supposed to be 1 year in? And then on top of that, not only is it benchmarking and progress monitoring, but maybe there's some kind of temperature check. Like I know Elena Aguilar has the great, in her Art of Coaching Teams, she's got the team temperature check. Like, are we still all following through on our roles? Do we all still understand what that vision and mission are? Is the leader doing what he or she is supposed to be doing? So what kind of strategies and tools are we using to check in with how we are performing as a team?
Yeah. I think that is that team temperature check that you just talked about, Kip. Super important to do this on a periodic basis. And I think as you start doing the work of the leadership team, that has to be part of the plan. So if you're going to do it quarterly, if you're going to do it twice a year, if you're going to do it yearly, whatever you decide to do, to make sure that whoever's creating those agendas, you've got that in there, because it's a extremely important piece to make sure that your team is moving towards the performing stage of their group.
And we just mentioned Elena Aguilar, who our team actually references a lot. brightmorningteam.com. If you go to her free resources, she's got items around those team temperature checks, agenda building, ways of building community commitments that are on her website, and they're free. But I would highly recommend The Art of Coaching Teams, purchasing that book, because it gives a lot of context to those resources and is just an outstanding tool for people to be using.
Yep, I would totally agree with you. That website that you were just talking about, the brightmorningteams.com, that is a treasure trove of resources, and I would totally agree with you. If you are thinking about starting a leadership team, or if you have a leadership team or any team of any kind, that is a book that you should read. No question.
Well, we're rolling up on almost 25 minutes here, Todd. And we've kind of ambled all over the place and moved from all over. But if we stop and think about how leadership teams can help empower our staff members, it can help create balance for a school leader. And it provides for a climate and a culture in your building that is just healthy and strong. By taking time to establish leadership teams with a clear purpose and a timeline of how we're going to do work, building that vision and mission, establishing community commitments of how we're going to do work, establishing our roles and responsibilities, establishing what our agendas are going to look like and how we are going to function within that agenda, and then progress monitoring along the way, we're going to reach a lot more goals and finish lines, and being able to establish new goals, new visions, and keep us climbing up that ladder really well.
Yeah. And I would invite, if you're a school leader out there and you are interested in support, if you're thinking about starting any kind of leadership team, don't hesitate to reach out to one of us on the principal leadership support team. That could be Kip, could be me, could be any of our teammates. We would love to support you in that work.
Yeah, and if you're not in Minnesota, you can still get a hold of us and we'll still help you.
Yes, we would. Yes, we would.
I don't think anybody listens to us outside of Minnesota, but I have no idea.
You never know, Kip. You never know, man. We could be global and we don't even know it.
I don't even know how many people listen to us within Minnesota that's not related to us. But you can get a hold of Todd, T Van Erp at mnce.org, or me, K Link, and that's LYNK at mnce.org. Or you can find us on Twitter at Principal Learner for Todd, at Kip Link for me. Yeah, we're here to help.
Yeah, we'd love to help you out. Seriously, we would, like, I can't believe that we're 25 minutes already. It seems like we've been talking for about 10. Wow.
Any final thoughts or stakes in the ground for you, Todd, before we sign off today?
Just one more thing around any kind of leadership teams. I think sometimes we get into the mindset that, especially as school leaders, if we're going to start a team, we want to do it at the beginning of the year. That's not true. You can start a team, and it could be an instructional leadership team. It could be like a building management team. You could start those teams anytime that you want. If you want to start them, after a couple of months of the school year, you could do that. You can start them at the end of the school year. Don't think that you have to be locked into starting any kind of team at the beginning of a school year.
And as you said that, it made me think of, like, sometimes we have events that pop up in school. Maybe you have a planning team for just one singular event. Family bingo night, or your MVP lunch day, whatever it might happen to be, that you can establish a team that plans that out, organizes it. Could be very short-lived group, but again, don't try to shoulder the load yourself. Those resources.
And Kip, I'm guessing that you might be similar to me in that, like, those type of teams that they plan those special events, whether it's a family night at school or something like that. I'm so grateful that there were people in my school that were willing to take that on. They loved that kind of stuff. That was not my jam. I didn't really care for that. I like the events, but all the planning and everything, and these people, there's some people on your staff, they are so good at thinking about all the little details about this, where my my strength was not in that area. So one more little piece of advice for you.
So use your people, use their strengths. The power of the room is greater than the power of one. Right? So with that, we will wrap up another episode, because now, instead of ending at 25, we're ending at a half hour. But hopefully you stuck with us and you'll be back. We are looking at another episode in just a couple of weeks. We're still waiting to see if the Minnesota legislature will wrap up anything. And that may be our next topic. And if not, we'll come up with more on some leadership practices that make you a more powerful school leader.
Hey, and if you are out on the golf course with Kip, you might want to take cover, but
don't stand to my right. I got a nasty slice.
But you're gonna get that fixed, right?
I'm working on it.
All right. That's all.
Have a great day, everybody.
Take care.